For the first panel, please allow me to introduce the moderator, Su-Yin. She's a co-founder of Captain's Table. She's an independent director at Hafnia, and very, very importantly, she's also the birthday lady today. Happy birthday.
Thank you. 25. In case you're wondering, 25.
No, please, over to you, Su-Yin.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As usual, I have the mid-afternoon session where I'm sure everyone is very, very energized and ready for this panel. So what are we discussing today? Today's discussion topic is really inspection excellence in the data spotlight. I've held or worn many different hats in my career, whether as a maritime lawyer, litigator, or whether in the role of in-house counsel in a mining company, or later on heading up the freight department in a mining company. Whenever something happens, or when you get a whiff of something about to happen, what's one of the first two things you say? Call the insurance companies, call the lawyers, and get the best inspector, right? Let's get them and make sure that they're on our side. So that's all I know about inspections, because I'm not a technical person. So I'm really glad I'm moderating this panel today, because I have a very preeminent panel with me today, and I'm hoping to be able to learn a lot from this discussion. But my first question, because I am ignorant and naive, is, are all inspections equal? Anyone want to answer that?
Yeah. Happy to kick us off. I mean, I think, firstly, definitely not. I think there's so many factors at play here, and I think you touched on there. Firstly, what's the purpose of the inspection? Who's paying for it? I think, is a really good starting point, because what the inspector goes on board, how they conduct themselves, obviously, it can be a big difference there in terms of, what outcome the person who's asked for the inspection is looking for. I think when we look from, Rightship's point of view, we do a lot of inspections. That's very much focused on risk management, identifying practices on board the vessel, but very much from a due diligence point of view to feed into decision-making, chartering decisions. But there is a range of different inspections, different purposes, valuations, condition assessments, leading into dockings and planning. So I think real range of inspections out there would be my response.
I'm glad you started, Chris, because this is exactly what we do at Idwal, is ship inspections, right? That's the whole focus, and I live, sleep, eat, and breathe this, and I could talk about it for the next half an hour if you want. But no, what I would say is exactly that. It depends on the end use case. There's all sorts of elements. What's the situation of the ship? Is she in cargo operations? Are the crew rested? Are the crew able to be with the inspector? The background of the surveyor, the checklist the surveyor is using, all of that has a completely different permutation on how the inspection will pan out and the purpose of the inspection. And then there's also how the inspection itself is interpreted by the person reading it, which is important. But given that there's been a lot of talk about data and AI and collaboration, APIs, all that sort of thing, I think the thing that I'd like to talk about specifically to inspections not being equal, and what we've done in Idwal to try and make them equal with the best of our ability. We talk a lot about subjectivity versus objectivity. They need to be objective. It needs to be a standardized checklist that you start from the basis of. You can then add on top of that for client-specific requirements, etc. But one of the critical things about it is that you take the questions and you use it to take data, which means they need to be catalogued. You cannot just ask questions and have free text answers to them. At some point you need free text, yes, but you've got to, if you're talking about corrosion, you need to say the percentage of corrosion. You need to say where it was seen. You need to say whether it was scattered, whether it was spotted, etc. Because if you do that, then you can apply it at what I like to call a 3D level. So you can compare two ships against each other, etc., or a fleet, and you can use it to improve your asset condition, which is something we're focused on. So.
This is us going digital. But Yeah, to start with, I think you're right. The scope of each type of survey is different. And you're right as well, George. But tongue in cheek, I think it depends on the motive of the survey also. Who's paying the surveyor? Who's contracting the surveyor? It could be a very meaningful charterer survey where he's independent. It could be just a tick box exercise, get the survey done and just get on with it. These also are things that happen. Let's not only stick to the creamy layer. You have inspections going across a spectrum. And when you do a lot of inspections, as a club, I was heading the survey program for over 10 years. And then I had very little hair left and I had to leave. So you see a lot of things happening, and it also comes down to how much the ship staff also kind of, I think that's a thing we're going to discuss later, what the ship staff want you to see, how much you're shown as an inspector or as a virtual inspector. But you're right. And I think, I'm not so sure if you touched upon, the type of the vessel is also a factor. Size, trading patterns and all that, but I think the type of the vessel is also an important factor on this thing. And hopefully there's no discrimination over here between surveys.
Yeah, from what I see as an ex-mariner, for a seafarer who's going to undergo an inspection, it's nothing different. All the inspections are just an additional workload for them. There's nothing different out there. And as the panel rightly stated, there are different inspections regimes looking into different things, while some might look into the regulatory compliance part of things, some might look into the marine assurance side of things, and then we would have these audits which look into compliance with company procedures or would look into continuous improvement and so on. However, my take on whether these inspections are different, well, what I would do is I would just take a step back and try and see what all these inspections are finally trying to achieve. Well, if we look at it closely, all these inspections are trying to achieve two main things. One is quality, and the other is commercial efficiency. And let's be very honest out here. Shipping, like any other industry, is out here to do business. And we have seen that finally inspections do improve the quality, and history has proven that because, for example, the SIRE program is a very good example of it. A few years back, before SIRE came in, the tankers were supposedly the black sheep of the industry, but today we see that they are benchmarked as one of the best within the industry. When it comes to commercial efficiency, well, because quality is improving, commercial efficiency is also improving. Again, from the operators or the owner's side who are being burdened with these inspections, there is a ray of hope out there. Not many people look at it this way, but the kind of inspection regimes that are being developed today, actually these inspections can provide a very good platform to, demonstrate the marketability of your entity or of your product. So, yeah, inspections are different, but finally they are trying to achieve the same thing. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So I guess whether or not they are equal depends on whose lens you're looking at it through, and its efficacy, again, also depends a lot on people. I would say, is what I'm hearing. Chris, I want to touch upon a point you made about, its equality may, I'm paraphrasing here, so pardon me if I'm misquoting you, but a bit will also depend on who pays for the inspection. And I had a slight smile when you say that, because when I was working at a charterers previously, we used to always lament that when we use a platform, for example, your employers, sometimes we don't know how objective or whether or not there's any bias in the inspection outcomes, because you make money from both sides, right? You get money from the charterers to pay for the inspection, and the owners also, I think, pay a fee to you. So this, and I think that's a real thing that you mentioned, right? Does it matter who pays for the inspection, and how do we deal with bias through the inspection process. Is technology really a solution, or is there algorithmic bias that we then also have to be aware of? Just wondering what, maybe Chris and George first?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, quite a lot in there to unpack. I mean, first of all, I think in terms of who's paying for the inspection, I think, if you're hiring someone to come on and investigate an incident, an accident, and you're really looking for something to put in front of an insurer or to support your case, then obviously there can be a bias come into that. You specifically sort of talked about sort of Rightship inspections. I think from the Rightship side, we really, it's underpinned by a standard, the Rightship inspection checklist. As James said, it's really important in terms of having that standard, that consistency. Our inspections, despite being paid by the owners, the operators, it's there as a tool to recognize performance, the quality of the assets, and ultimately, yes, for the operator to be able to market their vessel. But it's also really important for the charterer, the ports and terminals to have an awareness of risk. So underpinning, a strong inspection regime would be good governance, good standards. As an example, with our own inspections, we accredit all our inspectors. We also have a network of inspectors we use, but ensuring a consistent standard of them is really important. Getting feedback from the vessels when they've had the inspection so we can take action if there has been any sort of bias creeping in from individual inspectors, revoking accreditation of inspectors, auditing and maintaining that standard. So I wouldn't say there will be no bias and that there will be occasions where things don't go quite right. But I think the underpinning governance and value and credibility of an inspection regime and inspection standard and the role it plays in the marketability of the vessel and decision-making by different stakeholders, I think it's key. But I think, yeah, it really depends on a lot of factors of who's conducting the inspections, the different sort of idols out there. But I think it's why organizations that are doing a large volume but have that sort of underpinning can then build up trust in that rather than maybe independent inspections that may have more of a bias creeping in.
Anything to add, George?
I think that last point about scale is critical here. Something that Rightship has and we have in Idwal is that ability to get the feedback from the clients, because the reports are used extensively throughout the industry. Regularly we get questions about our grading system, how these things work. We get the feedback. We implemented crew welfare grading about 1.5 years ago now, and there's a lot of feedback coming in on that, etc. But I think, the scale allows you to get the feedback, which allows you to improve. I think one of the critical things here as well is that you sort of raised this point about who's paying and where does it go effectively, because in theory you can do one inspection and that could be used by the financier, the charterer, the insurer. The problem is each of those people has a different requirement. And I sort of battle with this a lot. If you were to have one inspection, who would instruct that inspection? So yes, you can have it with an impartial body doing it, but who instructs it? Is it the ship manager? So that, well, if it's a third-party manager, they can justify their performance to the owner. If it's an internal manager, it becomes a little bit more controversial because they're maybe more aligned with the owner, etc. So the impartiality of the surveyor of the report is critical, but it's very hard to find the right person who should always instruct the inspection across the industry.
Yeah, and I think you raise a good point because as a user of inspections previously, we used to find that there was always an issue and argument over the transparency of the inspection. So you know the result, but actually knowing the result is not good enough. You need to know the factors and circumstances that led to that result. And because there is this issue of who owns that data, relevant to who instructed the survey, it was really hard to get transparency unless you pay more for it, which used to baffle me. But that's a different discussion. But I guess my question really on that is now to Captain Hari and to Captain Mahyar. risk managers as a P&I club and industry association of Intertanko, when you look at platform benchmarking of vessels, and you said, there are issues around, okay, who's instructing, there could be bias, there may not be bias, depends on the scale of the data. When your members come to you and say, well, I have Idwal or Rightship, high-rated ship, how much credibility do you attach to that? And do you have any concerns over a platform or a move towards a more platform inspection at scale way of dealing with inspections and standardization?
I think definitely where an international group club is concerned, and I think we've got Yves over here also who's quite active in this, and Rahul, I think the data is quite sensitive. While it's the international group, I'm not so sure there's as much collaboration on a lot of statistical data because everybody's got, I think, rights on their own data. So if we go on a platform, definitely there would be a lot of concerns on how that data is ring-fenced, how that is whether sanitized or not, how it's going to be exposed further. But I guess when we come with Rightship and with Idwal and all that, I think there is that sense of security because their reputation also precedes. But again, going back to there, let's talk of smaller vessels. The Shipowners Club insures smaller vessels, tugs and barges. And one very important thing is they come with a lot of quality attached, no doubt about it, but that comes at a price. If I'm going to pay for a survey which outweighs the entire premium for that barge, it doesn't make sense, right? So I would then definitely to go for a cheaper option. I have to get the survey done for a barge which is unmanned, or example. So I need to get something done. And then there is actually a compromise, a calculated risk matrix that's followed to see what level of survey is required for, for that kind of vessel. Again, the scope of survey. And it also touches on now another element, human element, again, the quality of the surveyor, the accreditation of a surveyor. Anyone who comes out of sailing, even a second mate who's on a break for pocket money could do surveys. They do it. I've done it. Oh, but that was a good surveyor.
I appreciate the honesty.
So, yeah, I mean, so where we would be assuming that there's certain level of accreditation. He goes through his hours of training, he goes through his hours of peer training, etc., all that. Or you could just have somebody else. Okay, we want somebody in Indonesia, he speaks Bahasa, that's 80% of the battle done. So there is, it's not that one size fits all. We would love to be able to afford Idwals and Rightship for every type of ships, but there are certain amount of tonnage they will also not feel comfortable inspecting. And that's all the spectrum of shipping from top to bottom.
Yeah, I'll just go further to what Captain Hari said. It's very true. A lot depends on the inspector. And the newer inspection regimes are trying to make it transparent. They are trying to leave nothing to the interpretation of an individual. However, we have carried out, or rather, Intertanko members have carried out SIRE to trial inspections. We have feedback from around 130 SIRE inspections. And we saw that however much you try, finally, it's the inspector and the crew who are there on the spot. And there is still a very large element of interpretation of an individual being showcased in the report. Even what we are seeing is, at times, these observations are really not assisting in improving the operations or in improving the commercial efficiency of the ships. They are just leading to more and more of administrative burden to the operators and to the ship staff. A couple of years back, while I was still in my parent company and I was with the audit and inspection cell, our head always used to tell us that finally, the quality of the report does not depend on the number of observations that you have given as an inspector. It depends finally on how those observations are going to actually assist the seafarer to carry out a proper job, carry out a safe job, and carry out, efficiently those jobs that they are assigned to. So, yeah, bias, however much you want to remove it, there will be some bias, and that is where the training and awareness of the crew and the inspector, and most importantly, the end users of these programs should understand. So definitely a mindset change is required here.
I think that's a really good point that you make, and you basically took the words from my mouth, because I was going to ask about mindset, just hearing all of you speak, right? And is this an area where technology actually comes into play? So let's leave the platforms to one side. I think at the Maritime CEO Forum on Monday, the charterers were, really proud of the fact that they were introducing enhanced due diligence programs or very certified responsible owner programs. But having been on the charterer side before, I know there's pushback because the crew are saying it's more work. We already have had inspections done. And I see, I see a question right here about standardization or doing work ahead of time. So aside from platforms, what role, or does technology have a role to play in actually removing some of the bias, changing mindsets, and optimizing workflows for crew on board ships? Can it be done or no? Still the human element reigns?
No, when it comes to technology, definitely it will assist. That's for sure. And that is what we have seen from the SIA2 program. Now, the SIA2 program is a very technology-heavy program. It's just been introduced 25 odd days before, so we are still trying to capture what exactly is required. It will bring in transparency. It will bring in a kind of a more structured analysis of what people are looking at or what people want to inspect. But as I mentioned before, it does depend on the mindset change, because, okay, you have a report, so it's all there on paper, but finally how to interpret that report or how to analyze that report remains in the hands of a human, and that was not going to go. So, like if you all are using ChatGPT, of course you all can put in and the ChatGPT will give you an answer, but finally it remains the human's responsibility to actually check or verify how that output is, or is that output right. So I think up to some extent it will bring in transparency, but again, we will need some kind of human interference out there, that's for sure.
Thank you. George?
I think from that technology perspective is absolutely essential. The problem with it is it requires an investment in a sector where generally inspection companies don't want to invest because they can just give a handwritten PDF report out. So what it needs, I talked about structured data collection at the start, but I see there's a question on the board here about, can't you save time so that the crew on board aren't doing it? Well, we have a portal where all of the documentation can be uploaded in advance of the inspection. Sadly, the vast majority of times, if I'm honest, the superintendent just makes the master do that. Hopefully it's on the sailing passage rather than while he's in port. But yes, you can collect that data. Yes, you can have a centralized review team, not have it all on the surveyor, because we've talked about the surveyor, but if you have a QA process, and my technical team in Idwal, they hate it when I call them the QA team because they are all master mariners and chief engineers and they consider them, but that is a function that they provide as well. So they standardize it. Again, back to Chris's point about scale, the fact that we're often on board the same ship within a 6-month window, the first thing we do is we look at the previous inspection. If defects are found, which should have been seen by the surveyor previously, he will be reprimanded. We basically have continuous professional development for our surveyors. So you can use technology on an aggregate basis and platforms in the background, actually, not client platforms, but the platforms we use for surveyor administration, that can be used to standardize the inspections. But it's an investment to do that. Yeah.
And I think that brings me to actually one of the questions that's been asked. I hear a lot about scale. I hear about data and the importance of data. I think a question that was asked was, why not standardize the inspection scheme under one platform and database? And that seems to be targeted at the both of you, why not just combine your databases, standardize your inspection schemes, reduce the ability for parties, very commercial parties, to arbitrage your results, and less work for the owners? Wouldn't that also improve the accuracy of perhaps some of your algorithmic models with a bigger database set?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So I think standardization, we hear it time and again. I think it has so much value and so much opportunities, and actually our organizations are in dialogue and have been discussing. But I think it's not just between the service providers, it's those who are using the inspections, and that's where often the challenge lies. I think OCIMF, the SIRE regime, you can see the value in a standardized approach, not without its flaws, but I think has been a big success and provides a lot of value. Certainly when we talk about the dry side, you talked about sort of multiple inspections. We see it, whilst there's very strong offerings already there, the Rightship inspection, Idwal, we see many charterers mandating their own inspections as well. It's that sort of age-old challenge in terms of trying to bring everyone together to align on what's enough. Everyone has slightly different risks that they might be looking at and wants to go about it in different ways. I think on specifically talking about the dry side, the Dry Bulk Centre of Excellence is now up and running and starting to pick up pace. I think that's something that will be really interesting to see how that moves forward. There's a real opportunity there for that to unite stakeholders, not just from the charterer side, but also owners and managers, and bring people together and have those sort of conversations to move us towards this. So I think we're all agree, but it's, as ever, it's a challenge to achieve.
I don't think I could put it much better, to be honest with you. I think that sums it up. And I think probably the only nuance I would add on to it is it does come down to that end use of the inspection as well. The inspections that I most enjoy us doing, if you like, is where it's a real sort of partnership with the owner and either their in-house or the third-party managers, and the crew are briefed on board. Look, Idwal are coming on board, but we just want to know the truth about the vessel. If they find defects, you're not in trouble about this, guys. It's for us to really understand so we can properly benchmark. But that's a pretty unique scenario where that's what we sort of call that sort of, it's like a premium sort of improvement, but just in-house for the owner, if you like, and that's what and it's interesting, it's the sort of names you would expect in the industry who are looking for that, who are asking us for ESG reporting on their ships, just so that they can understand where they sit in comparison. So that's it.
And my next question is really for Captain Harry, because you've been sitting and listening for a while. Of everything that you've heard so far, what's really not working with inspections right now? And from the point of view of a P&I club, what is really worrying you about inspections?
I think mindset is a very important thing, because very often the seafarer's DNA is whatever it takes. We manage. And I think one of the ingrained things is getting through an inspection or a vetting or maybe a survey with the minimal or if no recommendations or points is like a feather in the cap. It's on our personal, professional pride to not have anything over there. And what happens is very often when the surveyor is supposed to be on our side, helps us escalate things and report, we just kind of, like, suppose it's a remote camera where you're holding the camera for somebody doing remote, you'll probably just kind of keep that area dark or kind of just put your shadow on that. And you think it's a job well done. But of course, now I'm sitting on this side of the fence, and for the greater good, we understand why the inspections are, rather than just get over with it, because there are too many. I think mindset is very important. So a surveyor going on board, so very often, we prefer having regional surveyors going on board the vessels over there because of language and other things. But at the same time, then the brotherhood kicks in over there. And then what happens is suddenly you're the bad person, and you're not very sure on the credibility. There are a lot of factors which play over there. But I think the whole thing is about the seafarers, that we just have to get it done. Just get on with it, get it done as soon as possible. No defects, no deficiencies, no recommendations, no downtime. Done, gone.
So I hear a common theme, right? Yes, it's mindset, but it's also about how all those involved in the inspection process kind of work together to streamline the process and build more trust in the system so that we don't have multiple inspections. It's a journey. I don't know whether we'll get there, but it brings me to my next question, and I know we have just a few minutes left, but for each of you, what would the inspection scene look like in 5 years in terms of skill sets? What will be the talent pool of inspectors, and what will the skill sets necessary or required for inspectors be in, say, 5 to 10 years? Will it be any different now from what we require now?
I'll give a concise answer because I haven't been concise previously, but I think it will change significantly. Today, it's all about the older, the more experienced, the captain or chief engineer, the more photos he takes, etc. Our data tells us that actually it's about their ability to understand our checklist, our requirements, our process, rather than trying to do everything their own way. So it's someone who has a more flexible mindset to standardization. That's the key.
I think I'll go back to some of the bits that came up in the earlier sessions. So the seafarer themselves, the role of the people. I think that is particularly for the type of inspections that we're conducting. Yes, there's the asset, the machinery, the process that are being followed, but the crew's competence, their well-being, all of these factors are critical to the risk that vessel presents and how well that vessel can operate. So I think inspectors that can engage with the crew and sort of understand those elements, not just the kind of core, raw technical aspects and condition aspects of the vessels. I think empathy for the crew, being able to communicate, engage, to really get to some of those factors, I think is going to be important. And then, of course, technology is going to have more and more of a role to play, but potentially that can be more prior to the inspection in terms of guiding the inspector in where they need to look and how the inspection is conducted.
You all have given very realistic answers. I will just go into a dream world now. In 5 years, what I feel is that the number of inspections need to be reduced. Today, a typical seafarer or a master on board the vessel in his or her 4 to 6 months contract will undergo a PSC inspection, a flag state inspection, a class inspection, a P&I inspection. You have the charterer's inspection. Then you have a marine superintendent inspection. You have a technical superintendent inspection. And then comes the audits, the internal audits, the external audits, ISM, MLC, ISPS. Now the cybersecurity auditors come in. And if karma has really hit you bad, you would end up with a pre-purchase and a pre-sale inspection and audit. So this is putting a lot of workload on the seafarers. On tankers especially, that is what I can comment on, is that one of the most important jobs of a seafarer is become successfully completing these inspections. Well, the main job of a seafarer is to operate that vessel safely and efficiently. And if we are allowed them to do this job rather than go into inspections, I think the output would be much better than just going through all these inspections and finally having reports which are just leading further to administrative burdens on the seafarers. Now, this is, again, as I said, because I'm an ex-seafarer, I feel more for it. But in the business sense, yes, inspections will improve quality and the commercial efficiency. Thanks.
Captain Har, very quickly, because we're out of time. In 5 words,
he
skill
said
set change.
5 words? Oh, he said karma with an R, okay? He rolled the R. Don't get dirty ideas. But I think in an ideal world, going even more ideal and no more this thing like Shangri-La from you, I think with more online monitoring systems, real-time monitoring systems, the necessity of surveys might reduce, and then what happens is you may only need to go and inspect certain elements, just like a clinical operation, go in, that out, go out, just check this, come out. And everything else should be available and just probably sample bits of inspection. And that's where technology can be used, right? I mean, if you're going for a medical, you don't go for the same medical every 3 months. So you could just...
Thank you. Please join me in thanking my esteemed panelists for sharing their views very openly and authentically. Main takeaway, inspectors, you're not out of a job, but you might want to learn a little bit about data. And also, I think it's how do we collaborate together to gain more trust in the inspections that are done by putting the crew at the heart of it and having a bit more empathy of crew through the inspection process. That is probably what excellence looks like. So thank you, everyone. And yeah.